Okay, we are now live on YouTube. One last little housekeeping item.
Got you.
All right, now we're live on Instagram as well. And pull this up so I can see our comments from our viewers. There we go. Mute that. Got 4 viewers currently. It's a good sign. Usually that'll pop up by the time we get going. And Instagram story view. This is a very low rent setup that works, but it requires some workarounds, to say the least.
I understand.
The version of 1L Studios will be far more streamlined.
Hey, everybody.
Oh,
This is...
That's not the one we want. Just use Melissa's pitching wedge to create a sun. All right, that ain't gonna work. Okay, good enough. The value of good enough with Stephen Yellen. Okay, I'm gonna roll the intro music, do our intro, and we can get into it.
My picture's okay. I mean, I'm not too close, not too far away. Is that right?
No, I think it's great.
All right.
As long as you're comfortable.
Yeah.
It's the name of the game. Okay, here we go. Rolling the theme song. And 3, 2, 1. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Grown Man Radio Show. Very excited for our episode today with one of my mentors in the game of golf, the creator of the Fluid Motion Factor program. Please welcome from beautiful Iowa, Mr. Stephen Yellen. Stephen, how's it going in Iowa, amigo?
And listen, am I in the 50s with that music? Okay.
Hey, that's the Blue Room, baby. That's been the Grown Man Radio theme song for many, many years.
No, that may not even be in the 50s. That may be in the 40s.
Yeah, big band era.
Exactly. I'm doing great. We got a nice day here. Probably going to hit 60. So I'm going to definitely hit the range, maybe the course.
Okay. And where are you teaching now? You're no longer in Florida. Where are you at in Iowa?
Well, when people come and visit me in this great state of Iowa, I teach at the Finkbein Golf Course, which is the home golf course for the University of Iowa. It's about an hour away.
Okay.
Then I travel down to David Ledbetter's place, when I do have clients.
I see. Okay. So you still have the relationship down there, still teaching in beautiful, sunny Florida.
Yeah.
I had a chance to come see you there, and that was really my first eye-opening experience in the Fluid Motion Factor program, was getting to watch you teach a lesson. And I saw a guy that started out the lesson completely lost, as a good player that had just lost his confidence. And by the time 30 minutes had passed, this player had refound his mojo. And I was like, oh, okay, there might be something to this Stephen Yellen character. And I'm so glad that that led me down a path to taking some sessions with you and going through your online program, reading your book a couple of times. And now it's so firmly ingrained in my mind that I've been through your program. And like you talk about, you'll get to a point where you don't even need the fluid cues. But in order to get to that point, you're going to have to use the fluid cues for a while. And I think I am at the place now where I no longer need them, but I still remember the tenets of the program.
All right, let me be the interviewer.
Okay.
What's been your experience with the program?
Well, when I came into the program, I was in the middle of my mini tour quest, and I was trying to swing better to play better, is the way that I like to say it. The natural inclination, if you're struggling, is to say, man, my machine is broken. I got to refabricate my machine to create a better swing. And so I was in the process of chasing my tail over and over and over and over and over, and ended up just getting to a point where I was like, man, I'm either going to have to quit or I got to do something different. And I ended up talking to Landon Michelson at a random event in Brownsville, Texas. And he said, hey, you sound like a perfect character for, checking out this Stephen Yellen guy. He sent me a PDF of your book, and I read it, and I sent it to my dad, and he read it. He said, this is pretty cool. And then I was down in Florida playing an event, set up a time to come see you. And like I said, that was when I shadowed you through that lesson. And I saw that what you were teaching was very straightforward, but also kind of half art and half science. I kind of liked that. I liked the fact that you weren't some guru character out there. I think that there's a bit of a, whenever people start talking about mindfulness and talking about some of these things that are not the most hard sciences, there's like this initial reaction like, oh gosh, watch out. Some of these guys are going to, say that they can walk on water. But I saw that you were a normal guy. I like the fact that you were a high-end athlete yourself. And I saw the results right in front of me with your student that went from snap hooking it and hitting two-way miss all of a sudden without changing his swing to hitting pure, high, perfect 7-irons. And so I went back home and got to work on your internet-based program, which was split up into chapters. And I like the way that that was done, because you have these sort of realizations on your own. And the homework is to reach out to you, and you did a nice job of being available to answer questions. But it's kind of like a self-study thing. So I liked that. I was able to kind of come to my own conclusions, and you layer these realizations on top of one another until you get to a point of really what you're trying to get people to achieve. And I think it's smart, because a lot of the big realizations in your life you have to have for yourself. It's not going to sink in as much if someone's telling you, do this, do this. So it was a nice, the program unveiled itself to me pretty much halfway through the second fluid cue. I was like, oh, I think I understand what's going on here. And you use the analogy of light bulbs being, you're never going to get 100 watts out of a 75 watt light bulb. I was maybe getting 50 watts out of a 75 watt light bulb. Your program got me up to my maximum capacity. And I realized that my good wasn't good enough. And I didn't have it just wasn't in me. And it, quite frankly, I wasn't willing to dedicate my entire life to playing golf professionally, which is what you got to do to create a 150 watt light bulb. That's got to be all you got going on. But I was very happy with the program, and it showed me how to maximize my existing potential, showed me where I was at, and it gave me freedom back on the golf course that I was lacking. I would dread when I would go play a round of golf, because I was going to be so embarrassed that I was going to, I'm capable of shooting a 65, but a lot of times I'm going out there and shooting 82, 83, and I just didn't know what the hell was going on. And so now I can say when I go out and play for fun, I very rarely shoot over par. Now that's about 6 weeks ago is the last time I played golf, but I have strong belief that when things return to some sort of normal here and I go back out on the golf course, I won't need to hit a bunch of balls to get back into the ability to shoot 1 or 2 under, just like it's walking down the street. No big deal. And that I can directly attribute to the lessons that I learned from your program. And I am grateful that I met Landon Michelson that led me your way. And I got to turn on my neon sign. We're online. There we go. On air, baby.
Steve, definitely in the 40s now.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great story. I remember you watching that lesson, and it's amazing how much talent players have, and they just systematically, a lot of the times, sabotage themselves. And all you got to do is sort of unplug the drain, and all of a sudden everything is flowing very freely. And it's not like we're changing their swing. We're just allowing them to access what they already own. And what people have, what they own, I guarantee you, is much more than what they think they own. So it's been a great adventure and a great ride for me.
No doubt. And what do you say to the skeptics out there that say, oh, this fluid motion, hippy dippy stuff isn't for me. I just need to get out there and grind and dig it out of the dirt.
Hey, okay, I say I get a lot of tape, okay, because you could have a lot of blisters. So here's the thing. About how long ago? It's about 15 years ago. I ran into a neuroscientist who worked with 2 Olympic teams doing research, brain research on these athletes. One team was from Denmark and the other was from Norway. And they were winter athletes. And you know how Norway dominated the last Winter Olympics. So that, this guy is the real deal. And we became very friendly. And he said to me something that really changed my whole perspective and will answer the question that you just asked, okay? He said, Stephen, muscle memory doesn't break down. Whoa. I remember there was like this nuclear explosion in my brain, because immediately I understood the ramifications for athletes. And having been an athlete and competing all my life, and I still compete, I realized the significance of this. And what this means, it's just the opposite of what this player who's trying to find the answer in the dirt, okay, every day for 6 hours thinks about. What this means is that once someone has a grooved motion, and the key word is grooved, it's not for beginners or maybe not even for intermediates, it's for someone who has a solid swing that goes to the range, drops a bucket of balls, hey, I'm feeling no pain, I'm fine, okay, boom. At that point in time, even though it's a shock to the nervous system, Clay, to hear this, it's a real shock, that swing cannot break down. From a neurophysiological perspective, not from a, let's all feel good and blah, 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 sports psychology, which is great. We're not talking about sports psychology. We're talking about neurophysiology. That swing cannot break down. What breaks down is the ability to access it. And accessing what you already own is the slipperiest slope in all of sports. It really defines careers. And everyone has had this experience, okay? 1,000 times if you played competitive golf, or even if you just play golf, is you're in practice round, you have a perfect lie, it's the perfect distance for that 7-iron, there's no wind, you're just licking your chops, you pull the trigger and you miss the green. You drop a ball in disgust, okay? And you knock it 3 feet. So what happened? Well, what happened is someone's calling me, okay? So
All right.
What happened, I got to turn the volume off. What happened, if the swing is broke on the first shot, it's going to be broke on the second shot. Why all of a sudden are you going to get some kind of eureka perfect shot? Why can't I do that all the time? Well, it's very obvious. The swing was never broke. Now, of course, okay, all you video enthusiasts who like to videotape a swing, which I'm not against, I'm just commenting on, Of course, something happened on the first swing, okay? That's why you missed it. You were too far on the inside, you were too far on the outside, the transition was just yucky, you were too shallow, you were too steep, you left the club open, you closed, you know, whatever. It could be, you know, 100 different things. Obviously, something happened in the swing, and that's why you missed it. But nothing happened on the second swing, okay? You flushed it. So all of a sudden, did you all of a sudden remember how to hit a shot? No. What happened is the processes in the mind, and probably we should get into this, that allowed you to access your money in your bank on the second shot. You violated the rules of the bank on the first shot. So you may have had $10,000 in the bank, okay? And $10,000 was in the bank on the first shot. The $10,000 was in the bank on the second shot. It's not all of a sudden you put more money in the bank in between the first and the second shot. That's impossible. But what happened is there are very, very subtle processes in the mind that systematically, and when I say systematically, I mean scientifically, okay, not a belief system, that allow you to access your money in the bank. If you violate it, if you violate these subtle processes, it doesn't matter if you have $1 million in the bank, you are not going to access what you already own. So what I have developed over a long period of time, because these processes are very subtle, this environment from which zone experiences are generated are very subtle, I developed a program that teaches athletes, that teaches golfers how to set up these subtle processes by design rather than them just showing up by chance.
So that's the $10,000 question, Stephen. How do I hit my second shot first?
You go through my program, Clay.
No doubt. No doubt.
So let's talk about some basic things, okay? Mm-hmm. To give you a general understanding, because you know as well as I know that when someone goes through the program, we're building a building from the foundation up. So we're not just going up to the third floor and give a little quick tip, oh yeah, I got this. No, this is a systematic, comprehensive program that you really have to boom, 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 and not look for a quick tip of the month, right? We're on the same page, correct?
No doubt, no doubt. You gotta own it yourself. Nobody can teach you how to do this. You can push someone in the right direction, but it's got to be your own realization for it to really stick.
Well, not only that, you have to go through a systematic way to build your own foundation. So, boom, you have to have this experience and this experience and this experience, and then eventually, and usually very quickly, oh, aha, oh, I see the light. Okay. Now, it's not my light, Clay. Okay. When the people go through the program, you'll excuse me if I get very dramatic. It's just I'm very passionate about this.
Go for it.
Is that when someone goes through the program, I tell them, I say, look, this is not my program. I did not invent how fluid motion is produced. Okay. I may be clever. I'm not the creator. All right. This is your program. This is your birthright. And what we're doing is we're taking what happens when you hit your best shot, and then we're examining that from the most fundamental level. Not from a superficial level, oh, I took the club back the way I wanted to take it. I got my hands in the right position. I've been working on that. No, that's a byproduct because the body doesn't have any intelligence. The body does not have any intelligence. All the intelligence of the body flows through the channels of the mind. So you have to ask yourself, I mean, there's so many questions you can ask yourself, but just on this analogy that I just gave, okay, the second ball syndrome, which I call. What is the environment that the brain physiology, because we're talking about brain physiology, we're not talking about mindfulness or any aspect of sports psychology at all. We're talking about how fluid motion is produced in a simple way, not in a deep, comprehensive, like you're taking a graduate course in neuroscience, okay, or a PhD. It's very simple. So you have to ask yourself a question. What is the environment that the brain physiology needs to operate in order to produce fluid motion? Now, do you think that's an important question, Clay?
I would say that that is an important question, and to someone who is not building a systematic way of understanding that question, it might as well be in Chinese. If it's like you have to have certain realizations before you can even entertain that question.
Well, that's why there are hundreds of golfers on the driving range in Orlando trying to dig the answer out of the dirt, and they'll never get past stage 2 of Q school. Okay, they'll never get past it. Chances are they won't. Okay, I don't want to make a blanket absolute statement. I'm not omniscient. All right, and it's because they cannot answer this question. There's one question that if a player or a coach or a commentator on TV can't answer, they'll always be searching for answers. Okay, and it's a very, very simple question. How is fluid motion produced, and why does it break down? Okay. If you can't answer that question, because when someone plays consistent, would you agree with this, Clay? They're extremely fluid, right? When they do not play consistent golf, that swing does not look synced. It does not look like it have a good timing or rhythm or balance, and it is not fluid. Would that be a correct statement?
Yeah, I think that's fair, no matter the ability level. You can see when someone's playing to their potential.
Right. We're talking about an 18 handicap player, or we're talking about Rory McIlroy. It doesn't matter. Okay.
No doubt.
So through many conversations with this neuroscientist that I mentioned, Dr. Fred Travis, real genius when it comes to the brain and how fluid motion is produced, though it's common knowledge. If you sit down with any neuroscientist, they're gonna explain the same thing I'm explaining. Okay, it's not my knowledge. So I developed a program that sets up these very subtle conditions. Now, may I answer how fluid motion is produced in a swing? Could I go ahead and go there?
By all means.
I know I didn't have to ask, but Adam. Okay, so here we go. So in order to produce a fluid motion, and actually any motion, whether you're hitting a golf ball, walking across the street, throwing a baseball, catching a frisbee, you have to generate a signal, an intention in the brain in order to have the club move, or else the club's not going to move. So you generate a signal in the brain. Now, there's two parts of the brain that are really interesting in producing motion. One is the PFC, the prefrontal cortex, which is the CEO of all the brain processes. It's called the CEO of the brain. Essentially, it's the discriminating intellect. And the other is the motor system. Now, when you, Clay, or me, Stephen, or any of the listeners have produced a fluid motion, during that motion, the signal bypasses the prefrontal cortex, the intellect, goes right to the motor system. It's the motor system which communicates with the body to produce motion. Now, here's the problem, and it's a big problem, especially if you're a professional athlete. If during that motion, 1.5 seconds it takes to hit a golf ball, that prefrontal cortex goes online, the intellect goes online, and it intercepts that signal. Then in the middle of the motion, the body is looking for direction because it doesn't have any intelligence. It gets all its direction from the mind. There's too many processes going on. That's when the bulkier core muscles tend to dominate the motion, and it's very challenging to sync the swing. So this process, when the signal goes right to the motor system, bypasses the prefrontal cortex, I have labeled it as the fluid motion factor. It's a process. It's not my process. It's your process. So I teach someone how to set up those conditions so the prefrontal cortex doesn't go online and you're able to access the money you have in the bank.
Beautifully said. So would it be fair to say that the infamous ego is linked to the PFC, or is that a different entity?
Oh, you know what? There are so many things that shut this down, okay? Ego could be one of them. The prefrontal cortex always wants to try to go online when you're performing something, even emotion, because it is the CEO. What does a CEO want to do? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Well, it's great to have the prefrontal cortex online when you're taking a calculus test, or you're setting up your studio, okay? Or, you're taking any kind of test or whatever, or trying to come up with a logical argument. Motion does not like the PFC. So what could bring the PFC online? Ego. Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. Ego, all right? Because this is an interesting one. I haven't thought about this too much. So I'm going to think on the fly here, right? So you're preparing for a big tournament, right? And you're practicing a lot. And you're hitting the ball really, really well. And you think that you have the potential to be a professional golfer, okay? And you're, naturally sort of pumping yourself up. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this, which is, of course you have to have confidence. But if you reach past a threshold point and the ego starts to get involved, thinking, I'm good, okay? I'm really good, okay? And these guys aren't as good as I am. They don't have my talent. They do not have my ball striking ability. So the PFC says, okay, Stephen, this is during the motion. I hear you. I understand. Let's just see how good you are. Let's just see how good you are. This is happening in nanoseconds during a motion. So it wants to see how good you are because after all, how you're pumping yourself up, right? So it goes online to see how you're doing. And as soon as it goes online, guess what? That magical part of the brain, the cerebellum that sinks the swing, gets challenged. And then you know where you're at? You're at the Bellagio table playing poker, okay? Because you don't know what you're going to get, right? Now, there's a wonderful quote, which I love this quote. It's one of my all-time favorite quotes from Tiger. Now, of course, we've all heard of Tiger, okay?
I was just about to ask you how what you just said relates to what Tiger Woods said about his inner experience.
Okay, so Clay, you're a little psychic. Open up another store somewhere, okay? Session, 15 minutes with Clay, okay? So that's right, exactly. Okay, so this is from his DVD called Tracking the Tiger. And he says, and I'm quoting, there have been key shots in major tournaments where I took the club out of the bag and I didn't remember anything until I saw the ball land on the green. Whoa, Tiger, come on. You want to rethink that. You want to rephrase that. We're watching Tiger. And Johnny Miller or Nick Fowler's in the booth saying, this is a back nine in Augusta on Sunday, okay? Look at Tiger's focus. Look at his concentration. Look at his determination. What is Tiger's inner experience? I don't remember anything, okay? Now, why did he say this? And there have been many instances, I think some of your listeners think about this, or you think about it, or I'll even think about it, when we've had zone experiences, our best experience, and we don't have a clear recollection of what the heck happened, okay? We don't even know what score, what's my, I had 4 birdies, right, what? So now Tiger, who has a more powerful ego than Tiger Woods? Who does not think that, that he's as good as Tiger Woods? Tiger Woods thinks he's the greatest golfer that ever lived, okay? I mean, his ego is very strong, extremely strong. So we're not talking about a weak-minded person. We're talking about a person whose ego is extremely well developed, who wants to step on the head. He says, I love to just beat people, okay? I just, there's a lot of 60 Minutes did a thing where I just love to win. I can't stand it. I just love to. So the ego is very strong. Well, where's the ego during the motion?
Sleeping.
The ego is sleeping. Now, in order to put the ego to sleep, this is a very, very subtle dynamics that have to take place. Because he takes out a 9-iron on the 12th hole. I'm just giving for example. Takes out a 9-iron on the 12th hole at Augusta with a swirling wind. Really can't judge a distance that much. Pin is cut right. Okay. And if he thinks I'm the greatest player that ever lived, and he swings, guess what? H2O, baby, right? Or over the green, can't get up and down. So what happens? It's very beautiful. We're coming to a very beautiful point here, okay? And what separates Tiger from the field, or Jack from the field, or all great athletes from the field? It's not the quality of their motion, because there's so many players that have great motions that have never made it. There's so many players that have great swings that you will never hear their name, okay? It's the quality of their silence. What made Tiger great was not so much the quality of his swing, though he had a magnificent swing, but so did Tom Weiskopf, okay? So did Elkington, you know. What makes him great and what made Jack great, that in that 1.5 seconds it takes to swing a golf club, they were swimming in an ocean of silence where the prefrontal cortex, the killer in a swing, it's the killer in a swing once you have the groove motion. It's a main violation of the rule of the bank. It was somewhere in Beijing. Or if they're playing in Beijing, it was somewhere in New York City. And that is a very rare art, to have that ocean of silence in pressure situations. Because most people in pressure situations, where do they go? More concentration, more determination, more focus, right? So what does that do? The prefrontal cortex says, oh yeah, well, let's see how you're doing, Clay. You have all this determination. Let's see how the swing is. And that usually happens in the transition. And that's when you don't know what the heck you're going to get. You know, you're playing poker in Vegas. It's Vegas, baby, at that point in time. So this art of silence, which will be the next phase of golf instruction, in my opinion, okay? We've nailed the swing. We've got the tools to understand the swing from 2D, 3D, and got fourth dimension even, okay? Well, all kinds of dimensions, all kinds of TrackMan numbers, all kinds of things. Okay, we got that. The equipment, not going to get much better. Come on, it's all marketing at this point in time, okay? So what is going to be the next breakthrough? It's very simple. What the mind has to experience in order to sink a swing and be consistent. And it's not one man's opinion. It's not my opinion versus another opinion versus another. No, because this is not my program. It's like a cardiologist, okay? You have a cardiologist in Sydney, Australia. You have a cardiologist in Tokyo. They're not going to be, this is how.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Stephen. We have a call coming in from Stewart Peninsula Golf Course. Does that sound familiar? Can we bring him on? All right, sorry to interrupt your train of thought. Stewart Peninsula Golf Course, you're live on the Grown Man Radio Show. Who are we speaking with?
Scott Robbins.
Scott Robbins, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Stephen. We have a call coming in from Stewart Peninsula. If you could turn off your YouTube there in the background, Stewart Peninsula. We're getting a little bit of a reverb.
Okay.
Scott Robbins is
Scott Robbins.
Yes, sir. Welcome to the program. How you doing this morning?
I'm wonderful. Great conversation about the ego. Stephen.
Yes, sir. My main man, Scotty.
Okay, hang on a sec. How's that?
Yeah, just mute whatever you got playing the show. Scott, yeah, you enjoyed the discussion on the ego. Yes.
Perfect. So question on the ego. Would you say that would be more of a level of expectation, level of anticipation coming in?
You've passed a threshold of what's acceptable, okay? No one goes to a tournament and says, okay, I want to play the worst round of golf I ever played, okay? No, they want to say, I want to play the best round of golf, okay? But if it reaches a point where it's unnatural, where they are pushing the envelope, where they are trying too hard, then I think there's a very slight but noticeable, well, that's the opposite, a very noticeable connection to the ego. And usually it has to do with a little of insecurity, because everyone knows that every time you play golf, it's going to be challenging. And you really don't know what's going to happen, okay? Because if you knew what was going to happen, it would always happen, okay? Golf is the most challenging sport because you're sending an object 300 yards in the distance, and who knows how it's going to bounce? Who knows what the wind is going to, is going to swirl or whatever? Who knows the lie? We all know that. So if there's not a little bit of innocence there, and it's too much ego, then which has to do with a little insecurity, in my opinion, just thinking about it on the fly, then you're going to run into problems.
Let me jump in there real quick. The word that I like to use is vulnerability. When you're talking about Tiger hitting the 9-iron to the 12th green, you got to open yourself up to the chance that you can hit it in the water. But in the face of that, you're going to trust yourself without any additional input from the PFC. You got to trust that your abilities are good enough. So that requires some vulnerability, which vulnerability is pretty much the opposite of the ego.
Now I'm going to tell you a story.
Another way to say it's 100% of acceptance.
Yes, no doubt. No doubt.
What was that? What did Scott say?
He's saying it's like what you're saying, that vulnerability
level
is
10 of acceptance.
Yes.
So I'm going to tell you a story. Okay, I've worked with and still am with Gabby Lopez of the LPGA Tour. Okay, who won the first tournament of the year this year, the Tournament of Champions. It's their Tournament of Champions, where all the people who won last year, that's how you qualify. So Gabby was playing in Australia about 3 years ago, right? And she shoots her lowest round ever. I think it was a 62. And I got on Skype with her and I asked her, Gabby, I'm really curious. What did you experience during this round that, you haven't experienced, a 62? It was a 62 or 64, regardless, it was her lowest round. Okay. What did you experience? And she used a word that I never heard before, that I was quite intrigued with this word, and I use it when I teach sometimes. Okay, she said, I felt innocent. Innocence. Now this is a professional athlete. Okay, you don't associate innocence with stellar performances. What do you associate with stellar performances? Grit, determination, focus. I'm going to get it done at all costs, okay? I'm going to leave my heart and soul out there. That's 180 degrees from innocence. It's 180 degrees from innocence. So I started to think about it. Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because you can use innocence, or you can use silence. In a way, it's the same thing. Silence, you're not too sure what's going to happen, because if you were totally sure what's going to happen, you wouldn't be silent. You would be over anticipating, and you would have tremendous focus, right? So what happened is that she fell into that state where she didn't know what was going to happen. I took the club out of the bag. I didn't know. I'm completely innocent. What does innocence mean? I don't know. Okay, it came as a surprise. It was a surprise. And to be in that state in a sport where you only get one ball, this is not baseball, basketball, football, tennis, where you get 1,000 chances. You only get one shot, and that one shot can cost you your career, or cost you the round, or cost you your year, okay? The ability to have innocence, or we'll talk about this in a second, wholeness, that is a very rare thing to experience.
Hey, Scott, what's been your journey with the Fluid Motion Factor program?
I met Steven, I guess we met online originally. And then I had him come in and work with some juniors a few years ago. And just the changes I've seen from my students once they get into swinging the golf club well, and getting them to understand that they already know, they've already got it, and all we've got to do is access what it is as we continue to improve skills, has been phenomenal. To watch these kids and even adults play with freedom has been amazing. I've told Stephen the story before. I had a good friend of mine who's been kind of following Stephen and I on Facebook, and he's with a golf management company. He came over for a lesson one day, and he hadn't played golf in 6-8 months, and had to go play in a pro-am at one of their big clubs. And he was much more interested in fluid motion and what was going on. We never touched his golf swing, and I wish I would have filmed this, because what his golf swing looked like at first and what it looked like at the end of the lesson were completely different. And the ball flight was completely different, and exactly what he was looking for, what he experienced when he was a better player in his younger years.
To me, it's like removing a mask. I had a similar experience. It's like you see your real swing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's an old Nicholas quote talking about great players. You know, it's Nicholas always talked about. I never heard Nicholas say this until he was retired from playing. Is he always talked about the movie he saw himself before he hit a shot. He saw the movie of him hitting the shot before he ever hit the shot.
And Tiger Woods talks about everything that he does, he's hitting to a picture. And I think we can agree, going through Steven's program, that both of those examples are examples of abstraction, which is how you set up the mind to bypass the CEO and go straight to what's the word? Delegating.
Now,
yeah, 100% agrees.
Scott, can I comment on that? And Clay.
Sure.
So there are many players who do the exact same thing that Tiger and what you said Jack does.
Yes.
And have had zero results as far as success. Okay. So the question is why? Well, if this is an answer, okay, for 2 people, why is it an answer for 2 million people, right? So I think it's a legitimate question. So here's my response to that. Because if there was a magic key, everyone would use it, right? So you have to understand how the mind works to answer that question. So I'll just give you a very brief description. The mind is like an ocean. There are surface levels of the mind, and there are quieter, deeper, softer, more abstract levels of the mind. And when you generate a swing thought or a picture from the surface level of the mind, you're inviting the prefrontal cortex to get involved, okay? When you generate that same picture, and this is the picture that Tiger and Jack and all these players who breathe in the land of visualization, because some people don't, some successful players don't. I don't think Bubba does, okay, or Dustin, they just get over and hit the ball. Though you have to visualize a shot somewhere. But the ones that are successful, they're generating the visualization, especially during the swing, if they have it from this level of the mind. And this begs the question, is that why do some swing thoughts work and some swing thoughts don't work? Why do some players have swing thoughts and play very well, and some players don't have swing thoughts and don't play well? Jack Nicklaus had 4 or 5. Lee Jansen told me he had 4 swing thoughts, okay? All he wanted to do was, if he did one, he was happy, okay? Bubba has no swing thoughts. Freddie Couples has no swing thoughts. Dustin Johnson has no swing thoughts. Rory's getting away from swing thoughts. So it's not what you're thinking, and it's not what you're visualizing, because there's not a right or wrong way of visualizing. I mean, this is a no-brainer. You want to hit a high draw. I mean, is there a perfect way to visualize a high draw? No, you just visualize a high draw. It's not what you're thinking. It's how you're thinking it. What level of the mind the thought is generated from, the swing thought is generated from. This has escaped everybody. No one talks about this, yet this is the real secret to how the mind influences the golf swing. So this visualization, Scott, is Scott still with us?
Yeah, he's there.
Okay, this visualization.
Yes.
Some players will really just live and breathe in this world of visualization, okay? Even during if they do it during the motion, it's a little, they're jeopardizing themselves, though they can, as long as it's so soft and so delicate and so quiet and so behind the scenes that it doesn't invite the prefrontal cortex to get involved in the middle of the motion to see whether you're executing what you wanted to visualize.
I refer to that as one of my favorite movies that I saw growing up, which is an old World War II movie called Run Silent, Run Deep.
Right. I like it. I never saw it, but I like the title. Okay.
I like to
Yeah.
think about comfort, gentlemen. I think Steven said, why do some swing thoughts work and others don't? To me, Steven's 100% right. It's coming from a deeper, softer level, but maybe a more digestible term for those who haven't gone through the program is, does that swing thought make you comfortable, or does that swing thought, is that trying to reinvent the wheel? Are you trying to have the swing thought in order to produce a swing, or does this swing thought make you feel comfortable?
Right. I think that is it's not the most profound understanding of these dynamics, okay? But it's a understanding of these dynamics.
It's a baby step.
It's a baby step, because if you are comfortable, you have a swing thought, and you have a swing thought, and the same swing thought on two different swings, okay? Same player, let's say same hole, one works, one doesn't work. The one, when it didn't work, they weren't comfortable. There was something was off, okay? And when it feels like something is off, it means the swing wasn't synced, essentially, okay? That it felt like you were fighting against different muscle parts, or different parts of the motion just didn't fit in like a puzzle and work together with each other. And then when it did work, it was almost like, a waterfall. There was no interruption kind of thing. It's the same swing thought. We're not changing swing thoughts. It's that the swing thought that didn't work was generated from, it's very simple. It's black and white. It's not even gray, okay? The swing thought that worked was generated from this level of the mind. The swing thought that didn't work was generated from this level of the mind. The swing thought that did work, it was such a whisper. It was just an intention. It wasn't in neon lights. It wasn't big and bold. But what happens is that after a while, when the swing thought starts to work, when it's just soft, when it's so delicate, when it's just an intention, oh, I'm putting all my eggs in this basket, baby, okay? And then they start generating it from this level of the mind, because after all, look at the swing thought. I'm just crushing the ball with this swing thought. This is magic. And then it comes up to the surface level of mind, and guess what? It's like that girl that completely disappointed you. You thought you understood her, and she's history, baby, okay? So what do you have to do? You got to find another girl. You have to find another swing thought, okay? And then you stick with it, boom. I don't know if this is a good analogy or not, is that the swing thought works, it works, and then you start generating from this level of mind, it doesn't work, so what do you got to do? You know what? You're running around like a chicken without a head for 40 years, 50 years. Now, golfers out there, I'm reading you the Riot Act. I'm looking right into your soul. You have been searching for something that cannot be found, but you don't care. You'll get that next tip. You'll work on something else. No, I just haven't gotten it yet, Steve. Oh, really? Okay. Let me know when you're finished with your golf career, okay? And you had one subpar round, okay? And you never really won a tournament, even though you knew you had better ball striking ability than 90% of the field.
Bravo.
Yeah.
This is the man on a mission, okay?
So you're coming down to your last 20 minutes in an event and all the demons are starting to fly.
Right. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think he finished. Right. You asked your question. Where do you go once the demons start hitting you on the last 20 minutes of your round? What is that your question?
Pretty much. Okay. It's a big one. Clayton, you played. It's a big question. You're coming down. You realize that you're about to do something on a big scale, and now the question is, what do we? How do we quiet it down?
So
dance with the devil.
Here's the answer to that question, Scott. Are you ready?
Yep.
There is no answer. Okay? There's no answer to that question. There's no magic bullet. There's no magic formula. There's nothing. So what does it come down to? I'll tell you what it comes down to. It comes down to your ability to access silence under pressure situations in those 20 minutes. So what does that have to do with? Okay? That has to do with a lot of factors. None of them golf related, all off the course issues. Okay? That has to do with your level of fear. Okay? Now, fear doesn't just show up because you're having a bad hair day. Okay? Now, every professional athlete experiences fear. I don't care who it is. I heard Nadal has a lot of fear before he plays. What's his name? Bill Russell used to throw up, okay, before major, games in basketball. It's impossible to be an athlete and not have fear. We all have it, okay? The question is that when it passes a threshold level and it intercepts that signal and allows the prefrontal cortex to go online, that's when the issue comes in. So you have to ask yourself, after you have that fear, because before you make it as a champion, you will have fear and you will choke your brains out. It's just inevitable, except, if you're a guy like Tiger or Jack, who are, once or twice in a lifetime kind of guys, right? So you have to ask yourself, where does the fear come from? And what I've identified, and this is an off the course, in a way, come to Jesus meeting that you have to have with yourself and get everything out in the open. Fear of failure, fear of success, playing for somebody else, not comfortable in your own skin, or not worthy. Because and we all have that to a certain degree, every one of us. But again, if it reaches past that threshold point, so after the round, after you choke, after you have that fear, which is part of the learning process of being a professional athlete, you have to come to terms with yourself, okay? Why? It's not that I had it. It's not that can I take a magic bullet so I don't have it again? No, it's I want to understand why I had it. And then work on that area of your life so that when you are faced with the same situation, and if you're good enough, you will be faced with the same situation, that you'll be able to contain it and still have that freedom to finish the deal.
Stephen,
That's perfect answer.
Stephen, have you heard the expression "no ego, no fear"?
No.
What do you make of that? Does that sound like mumbo jumbo? That really brought me some value. I know you can't, trying to silence the ego is like what you describe. You're trying to chase something that doesn't exist. But if you have the realization that you have control over your awareness, you can choose what you are aware of, and that effectively quiets down the ego. That was one way I heard of explaining, if you don't have the ego online, fear is tied to the ego dying, basically. So as long as that guy is sleeping, you're not going to be as fearful. But there's no magic bullet to not be afraid out on the golf course.
Anyone who says there is, let them go and compete and take the bullet themselves, okay?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it would be nice if there was an easy fix, but I've heard a lot of players just talking about harnessing the nervousness, and they see it as a strength instead of a weakness. But that takes a little bit of perspective to understand what's going on neurophysiologically. Nailed that first time. Or on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, you're playing like Freddie Couples or Bubba, and it's just pure feel, and you're not aware of the fear.
Well, I think it's impossible not to be aware. Well, I shouldn't say that, okay? Tiger, I think, just thrives on pressure situations. He becomes more silent. He sinks deeper into an ocean in pressure situations where other guys just go the opposite way. They're so tight, they cannot release the club.
No doubt. Scott dropped off, but we did have a question come in via YouTube. Big Boiler 508 asks, a few years ago, I would completely freeze up when I was trying to start my golf swing. I was frozen and couldn't initiate the swing. Any thoughts on what causes this?
Fear. Okay, so the question is, why do people do that? And I'll give you my take on it. All right, they're in swing prison, or one take. Okay, it's not the only take. Okay, because they may not have the ability to have that freedom under pressure situations. Okay, but maybe they do, and they're so focused in on their swing, working on their swing, day in and day out, hitting so many balls, giving themselves a report card mentality every time they hit a ball, that when they get in competition or at certain points in their career, their mind is so much a prisoner of the swing that it just freezes them, because they have so much they want to do during the swing. It's too much. Okay, it's like an overload to the brain. So that may be one answer to that. But for me, really, to answer the question, I'd have to see the player swing, and he'd have to go through aspects of the program. But let him know. What's his name? Bubba? Did you say Bubba?
Big Boiler 508.
Hey, Big Boiler 508. Okay, I'm going to give you some words of wisdom here. You're a much better player than you think. You have, if you're listening to this, you're into golf. You have a lot of money in the bank, and you are shutting yourself down. And just don't shut yourself down. And I'm going to give you one hint not to shut yourself down. And I want you to try doing this on the range. I want you to start hitting a ball with no target. No target. Doesn't matter where you hit the ball, because the target, it just allows the prefrontal cortex to go online to see whether you're hitting the target or not. So I would say these two things: you're much better than you think you are. You got a lot of money in the bank, and start hitting with no target, and realizing that you don't have to work for the next 100 years on your swing. Your swing is probably good enough to get now to get the job done.
Stephen, I'm going to open up the phone lines again. If anybody else has a quick question, the number's 925-726-3224. And I guess I would throw a question at you. Who is best suited for your program? Is this someone that already has a predictable shot shape, or can a true beginner benefit from what you're teaching?
There is a way to teach someone. A beginner doesn't have much money in the bank, okay? There's a way to teach a beginning golfer to put money in the bank and allow them to access these subtle processes in the brain, okay, which you think are only accessible for really good players who have good swings. No, a beginning golfer, they have to put money in the bank, but there's a very subtle way to do it. And I go through this. If you're a golf instructor and you want to learn how to do this, there's a certification program to do this. But essentially, anyone who's creating motion, okay, which any golfer does, they're going to benefit from this program, from the very beginner to the number one golfer in the world.
Beautiful, beautiful. Another little random question. You hear a lot of commentators mention when someone's really making a lot of putts. I remember Ian Poulter specifically, when he got into a zone at the Masters a couple of years back, they were talking about his soft eyes, sort of his soft gaze. Is that, can you comment on what's going on when somebody has soft eyes?
So where does the softness come from? Does it come from the eyes? No. Okay. It comes from the more subtle processes in the brain that are controlling whether the eyes have an intense gaze or a soft gaze. So it means that the mind is soft. The intention from where to gaze is soft. So you take care of that level, you're going to have a soft gaze. You're going to have soft hands. The cerebellum actually is like a thermostat. It controls the pressure on the hands. If it's working correctly, you don't have to worry about pressure. If you're generating intentions and the mind is very soft and it's very quiet, then as a byproduct, you're going to have soft eyes. Okay. Now, even though Tiger was, walking around this ball like he's, tracking a tiger or whatever, trust me, everything is very soft inside. Okay, even though the intensity is there, that's how you're able to pick up, the line on the putt and the speed and everything. It has to be soft.
So when someone hears that and they say, oh man, next time I go out and play golf, I'm going to look with soft eyes, they're kind of missing the point.
They're trying to go for the byproduct without going to the source.
Gotcha. Well said. And I've been victim of that too. I mean, we all go through our own journey in golf and you find out what works and what doesn't work. But what has consistently worked is fostering a state of abstraction based on the realizations that I had by going through your program. And I really can't recommend it strongly enough. Start by reading the book and then go and see Stephen in person or go through his online program. And you're going to be a lot more consistent. And like Scott says, you might sort of unlock the real you. I really like that metaphor of wearing a mask. You're trying to swing a particular way. You're sort of an imposter. And so what Stephen is trying to get you to do is to access what you already own, and you'll get a freer swing that will look more like what your brain is constantly analyzing what works and what doesn't work. It knows what swing it wants to produce. The problem is you get in the way of the swing. The ego gets in the way, or the PFC gets in the way. And so Stephen's program teaching you to bypass the PFC is the real deal. And I really appreciate your time today on Grown Man Radio. Do you have anything else for the record?
No, I really enjoyed it. Okay. And I felt like, we started off in the 40s and 50s and ended up in the 21st century.
Hey, it's been a journey, man.
Thanks, Clay. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks to our caller, and thanks to Big Boiler 508. We'll see you for story time on Saturday. I'm going to be reading Ollie Plays Golf. Stay tuned for that. Take care, Stephen. Thank you.